the quickest and fastest race cars on the planet. The superstars of the National Hot Rod Association come to play under the lights on ESPN Speed World. From Hartman Park in Topeka, Kansas, it's NHRA Championship Drag Racing at the 4th Annual Western Auto Nationals, presented by Slick 50.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dave McClelland, and it is July in Topeka. Summertime means one thing in the Midwest, and that is a lot of heat. I don't think there was a single person prior to the running of this Western Auto Nationals that expected an assault on the Nitro record book. But in one phenomenal day and evening of qualifying, that's just what they got.
It all started on Friday afternoon with Scott Coletta, the reigning Winston champ. He was in the far lane against Doug Foxworth. Remember, back in 1995, Coletta almost blew it over backwards here in Topeka. Here, he blew both ends of the record into oblivion, 463 at over 315 miles an hour.
It had the front end up out there a little ways, and I thought, not again. I almost thought about shutting it off, but wind got a hold of it, and the wings worked, and guys are awesome. I mean, I can't say enough about my crew.
It was in the late afternoon, early evening hours, under the lights on Saturday, that Joe Amato made drag racing history again. Doug Foxworth was alongside. Amato ran the first ever run in the 450 zone, 4.595 at over 314.
You know, the car had the wheels up. When they put them down, it was like an airplane landed. It smoked the tires. We were the first to go 260 miles an hour. Now we're the first to go 450.
That may be hard to back up.
Well, we're not worried about backing it up. Right now, you got to do it for the first time. It's not done qualifying yet, but tickle pink. Jimmy Prock, my whole team's doing such a good job. Can't say enough about the whole team. Hanging tough, and Joe Amato's going to have to be ready.
Little did Joe know when he was receiving the accolades of the crowd that his words were all too prophetic, because the last car down the track on Saturday evening in qualifying was the hottest driver in Top Fuel racing this year, Blaine Johnson, in his Travers Tool Company car, with the wheels up off the starting line, took away the top qualifying spot and recorded the quickest run in history, 4.592.
Yes! That had to be like riding a rocket.
It was awesome. Wheels up to half track, smoked the front tires when it came down. I've been telling everybody all year, these cars are running in the 450s, and obviously it ran better than a 459 because the model was number 1 already.
459 with a 2.
Yeah, baby. You know, it's short-lived model, but, you know, we're all trying for that number 1 spot.
As Blaine got his cheers, want to remind you that in addition to this trio, both Kenny Bernstein and Larry Dixon ran under the current ET national record of a 466. It was in round 1 that Blaine Johnson used the opportunity to back up within 1% his national mark. His opponent was Gordy Bonnet in the Bill Miller Engineering Chevy-powered machine. He went up in smoke, and both ends of the national record, elapsed time and speed, resided with Blaine Johnson after that pass. But the jubilation did not last long. On the very next pair, Scott Coletta ran 312 miles an hour. That took back the speed record at over 315 miles an hour. Our die-hard ladder for Top Fuel Eliminator shows you the pairings for round number 2. From the number 1 qualifier side, here is the other side of the ladder and the pairings in those matchups. Steve Evans has had a chance to look at why they're running so fast.
When you have a racing surface as incredible as Heartland Park Topeka, there's a couple of aerodynamic changes you can make to a Top Fuel dragster. It'll go even quicker. With all the traction, you can reduce the angle of attack of this huge wing. 2 or 3 degrees will make a tremendous difference. Maybe 3, 4, even 5 miles an hour at the far end of the racetrack. Now, without the wing trying to lever the front end up quite so hard, you also can reduce the area of these front wings. In fact, on this car, they have shortened them 4 inches. But what about wheel stands? Well, there's a giant lump of lead right in there. That'll take care of it for the first 200 feet, and still the wings start to work.
The quickest cars in motorsports today, Top Fuel dragsters. This is round number 2 at Heartland Park. Record-shattering weekend. Will it continue? The awesome thunder of nitro horsepower up to 7,000 utilized by these top fuel dragsters. Blaine Johnson holds the points lead coming into this race, followed by Dixon, Scott Coletta, Kenny Bernstein, Joe Amato rounding out the top 5. Ron Capps driving Roger Prim's dragster, making only his second appearance of the season. He qualified 11th and pulled off a gigantic upset in round number 1. His opponent here, the Bud King, Kenny Bernstein. His record-shattering performance of 462 qualified him in the number 3 spot. He defeated Shelly Anderson in his first round race. But Kenny came into round number 2 understanding what can happen when you have a sharp driver in a good running race car. Corey McClenathan found it out in round number 1 against Ron Capps. A whole shot advantage, an advantage off the starting line. Earned for Ron Capps $500 from Slick 50. As he had a slower elapsed time, yet picked up the win by just a couple of feet. Will his dream continue? Not this time. Capps up in smoke. Engine problems, a big fire for Bernstein. He's okay, and he wins the race at a 483. He's got lots of work, though, as we continue in just a moment with more Top Fuel action. ESPN Speed World's coverage of the Western Auto Nationals is brought to you by Western Auto. Western Auto and Western Auto's Parts America are the official auto parts store of NASCAR. And by Fram Double Guard. Now one oil filter protects 2 ways. Twice as much reason to pay a little now or a lot later. And by Quaker State, the motor oil that exceeds the highest standards for engine protection. Welcome back to Heartland Park, Topeka, and the Western Auto Nationals, presented by Slick 50. Round number 2 of Top Fuel Racing. The newest top speed record holder is in the far lane. Scott Coletta, his opponent here, the surprising Andy Woods. Woods pulled off a giant upset when he beat Larry Dixon in round number 1 from his number 12 qualifying position. His opponent, Scott Coletta, qualified 4th. You've already seen him set a new speed record. He is the defending champion here at this Western Auto National. Wiping a little bit of the nitro fumes in the sweat. It's hot, it's humid, but this racetrack has such tremendous traction that these cars are hardly affected by the heat and humidity. It is an incredible weekend indeed. The John Mitchell Montana Express car, driven by Andy Woods, got a lot of help from Big Daddy Don Garlitz this weekend, help enough to qualify it into the quickest field in drag racing history. And an explosion for Woods puts him out of contention as Scott Coletta records a 476 at an off-pace 297-mile-an-hour run. He also has got problems. Look at this. Both of them caught fire down track, indicating a lot of damage inside the engine. Woods was the first to go. Trailing a stream of oil out the back, it finally caught fire, and a big blaze there. And Scott Coletta had a small fire as he went past the finish line. Here's the next pair of cars at the starting line. This is Joe Amato, the first ever in the 450 zone. On board with Mike Dunn, and what a vantage point looking down that long, slim nose of the 300-inch wheelbase Top Fuel dragster, the Mopar machine owned by Daryl Gwynn. That's Daryl's dad, Jerry, out in front, backing him up. The Team Mopar dragster qualified number 7 and beat Eddie Hill in the first round. As they approach the staging beams, the car alongside of him, the number 2 qualifier, Amato, beat Bruce Sarver in his first round race. What is unique about this, it was just a few weeks ago down in Memphis, Tennessee, our last race here on ESPN. The finals in Top Fuel Eliminator matched Joe Amato and Mike Dunn. There, Dunn had a giant hole shot. Amato ran much quicker and faster, but to no avail, as Mike Dunn pulled off the upset win, took his first victory of the season. That was at Memphis a couple of weeks ago. The question is, can he do it again? And the answer is no. As again, engine problems and a big fire slow Mike Dunn. This has happened to a number of racers here in round number 2. Look at Amato slowing to only a 5:02, but it was enough to win and advance him into the semifinals. Dunn's problems began when he lost traction. Amato had difficulties as well.
Obviously, something went wrong with Joe Amato's hot rod. Had a nice 475 in round number 1 and drops off to a 502.
Well, Steve, it shook real hard there, and I had to pedal it. You know, got off it, and then because I saw Dunn, well, I didn't see him anywhere. I'm sure he was there. Then I saw a ball of flame, and I got back on it, and I just click pedal and just wanted to get down there. That was bad when they oiled the track like that, but the safety safari done a good job, and it's about 110 in the shade here. But we're just glad, after we gave him the win last time, maybe God paid us back, and we had one coming.
Going to the Final Four.
Well, it's obvious that Memphis is still on Joe Amato's mind. Here's our final pair in round number 2 of Top Fuel. It is Dunn Coletta, the man that bankrolls the American International Airways team. He qualified 9th and defeated Bob Vandergriff Jr. in the first round. His opponent, the new national record holder for elapsed time, Blaine Johnson, number 1 qualifier, and as you saw a bit earlier, defeated Gordy Bonin in his first round race. That is Alan Johnson, Blaine's brother and crew chief on this car, and the one that most folks credit with getting the performance out of that huge 500 cubic inch nitro-burning engine. Scott Coletta, the reigning Winston champ, trying to make a move in the point standings, is rooting for Dad. Oh, and Dunn Coletta on and off the throttle. He maintains control and gets across the finish line first. Something went wrong on Blaine Johnson's car. Connie did not have a pretty run, and the elapsed time shows it a 5:73. His speed only 240 miles an hour. Look at this. He's on the throttle. He's off the throttle. He's on the throttle. The car bowing up and down in the middle as Connie constantly applying throttle to it, trying to get to the finish line first, and he does. Here are the pairings for the semifinal round of competition. Kenny Bernstein will get to pick the lane over Joe Amato. Scott Coletta picks it over his dad, Connie.
Well, it looked like days of old as Connie Coletta pedaled this machine all the way down the racetrack. He couldn't see his opponent, the new world record holder, and wasn't about to give up. Fortunately, the engine in the car appears to not have suffered from all of that abuse. And Connie Coletta getting his helmet up, I'm sure, very hot and very uncomfortable, as we all are. But Conrad, the new world record holder, is headed for Denver, and you're headed for a meeting with your own kid.
Oh, that's what fate is, I guess, isn't it, Steve? Yeah, I got pretty crazy out there with the car, but he wasn't in front, so I had to say I'd do what I needed to do.
Here's the run by Blaine Johnson against Dunn Coletta. As you see, it launched very well. Got out, it started to shake a little bit, smoked the tires, and then just shut off. Steve's with Blaine.
Well, sometimes, Blaine, these cars have a mind of their own.
Yeah, obviously this one does. Went out there, smoked the tires. I was going to pedal it. Obviously I could have beat him a little bit better than that, but it shut off for some reason. I don't know why.
When you go home with a world record, that's some consolation.
Yeah, a little bit. We wanted to win this thing, man. We needed a win bad.
There's one coming soon, I'm sure.
Blaine Johnson, the leader in the Winston points chase, out of competition here at Heartland Park, Topeka. They'll dissect that engine and find out what went wrong. There's the man in funny car, the man to beat, John Force. We'll see that action in just a moment. It was not just the top fuel racers that were quick and fast at the Western Auto Nationals. The funny cars held up their end of the bargain as well in the far lane. Chuck Henschel in qualifying, using the tune-up of his crew chief, Tim Richards, the general, ran the fastest speed in drag racing history, 308 miles an hour plus. Steve Evans was there.
Oh, man, hats off to the general. What a job those guys are doing. The whole Kendall Super Winch team. This Dodge Avenger, I love it. Can't say enough about it. Thank you very much.
He was not the only speedy one in the near lane. Al Hoffman, again, funny car qualifying in the daytime, on board with a run faster than the record, 306.53 miles an hour. Of course, all of these runs in qualifying require the 1% backup to establish the national record. Another fast one at over 304, Cruz Pedregon in the Team Castrol machine. But it was his boss man and teammate, the leader of the Castrol team, John Force, that left everybody breathless. It was under the lights, taking advantage of the cooler conditions. Pure poetry in motion. John Force recorded the quickest elapsed time in drag racing history, 4.88 seconds.
At a half track, she had the front end up. And I'm thinking, baby, sit down on me. You ain't talking to me. I'm a little shook. That was a good run.
That was a great run.
What an understatement, more than a good run. Earlier, Steve had a chance to look at why the funny cars are running so good.
NHRA allows fuel funny cars so little rear spoiler that most are hesitant to shorten that down just to reduce drag a little bit. But there's a couple of things you could do in advance of coming to Topeka. You could show up with the engine maybe 2 inches further forward in the car, but that's a lot of work. Instead, by changing these motor mounts and the rear engine plate, you can lower the angle of the engine, and that does a couple of things. Both are good. Take some weight off of the rear end, allowing the tires to grow quicker and really squirt. It also adds a little weight to the front end, keeping it down to reduce wheel stands. But most of the teams don't do much of anything.
The die-hard lineup for funny cars shows John Force and Whit Bazemore meeting up in round 2, Al Hoffman and Tom Hoover. The other side of the ladder, it's Etchells and Oswald, and the Pedregon brothers get a chance to battle it out in a family feud once again. And that will be the first race we see in round number 1. Tony Pedregon at the wheel of the Castrol GTX machine. His opponent is brother, who is currently in 3rd in the Winston points chase coming into Topeka. John is 1st, Tony is 2nd, Al Hoffman number 4, and Mark Oswald occupying the 5th position. Tony coming on board with the Castrol team at the start of this 96 season, qualified in the number 3 spot at a 496, beat Kenji Okazaki in the first round. His opponent and brother, Cruz Pedregon at the wheel of the McDonald's Firebird, beat Del Worsham in his first round confrontation after qualifying in the number 6 spot. The fans just love this kind of racing. The two brothers going at it, the Castrol versus McDonald's challenge. It happened earlier in qualifying under the light. Tony in the near lane, Cruz in the far lane. Cruz got out of his lane, hit the cone in the center of the track. They both ran in the 490s, but Cruz's run was disqualified because he hit that timing device out there in the center of the racetrack. This is round number 2 racing here at Heartland Park, Topeka. There is Cruz Pedregon upsetting his brother, 494 in the fastest speed ever, 310 miles an hour plus. What a job done by Dave Settles and Lee Beard, the brain trust that operates that McDonald's Nitro team. What a run, 310 miles an hour plus. If you thought John Force was poetry in motion under the lights in qualifying, just take a look at this. Dead center in the lane, he heads to the finish line with the fastest speed in drag racing history.
494 at 310, so much for brotherly love.
Wow, that's incredible. It's awful hot out there, and what can I say about my brother? You know, I'm real proud of him, and John Force, great team. Enough said about those guys, but I tell you what, the difference, I want the fans to hear this. The McDonald's team, it took a while to get used to Dave Settles and the whole group, but Dave Settles and Lee Beard are showing their stuff.
I don't know that Cruz has realized yet that he just ran 310 miles an hour. Here's the guy that was the fastest ever. The Dodge Avenger, the Kendall car of Chuck Etchells. Number 2 qualifier beat Ray Higley in the first round. The Dodge Avenger, the In-N-Out burger machine of Mark Oswald, qualified number 10, but stepped up in round number 1 to upset the quicker qualified Dean Scusa. The celebration continues in the McDonald's camp. Sitting on the tailgate, that is Coach Joe Gibbs, the owner of the McDonald's team and the NFL Hall of Fame coach. You're inside the Dodge of Chuck Etchells. Oswald in the first round ran 5:01 at 303. He's a contender. Oh, Etchells all over the racetrack as Oswald streaks to the finish line. Another 5:0. 5:08 at 274 miles an hour. Moves Mark Oswald into the semifinals of funny car competition. A new engine going into the frame rails of the Bud King dragster. Kenny Bernstein's Ryan will have a new power plant when he comes back in the semifinals. We'll return in a moment with more funny car action from Heartland Park, Topeka. Even though he's out of competition, Corey McLenathan's still a fan favorite, signing autographs out of the McDonald's pit area. Meantime, on the racetrack, the ever popular, the mega favorite, We're talking, of course, number one himself, John Force, 5 times a Winston champion. He qualified number one here, the quickest elapsed time in drag racing history, and beat Brad Platt in round number 1. His opponent, the Smokin' Joe's Mustang, the number 8 qualifier of Whit Bazemore. His victim in round number 1 was Gary Densham. Right now, let's go down to the far end of this sprawling racetrack at Heartland Park, Topeka. Steve's with Mark Oswald.
You know, I didn't think this track was as good until we saw Cruz.
Yeah, this track's awesome. I mean, for a track to hold up like that in the heat, it's just phenomenal.
Hard to believe the performances you're getting here with the heat and humidity, but it is truly an outstanding performance weekend. Can John Force even improve on his 488? That's the question in everybody's mind. In his losing effort, Whit Bazemore issues a strong challenge. He runs a 5:08, but Force is better. 496 at 306 miles an hour. This run marks the 6th consecutive pass by John Force here at Heartland Park, Topeka in the 4-second zone. Nobody has ever done that before. Force crosses the finish line at least 2 car lengths ahead of Whit Bazemore. Our next pair into the burnout procedure, it is Al Hoffman at the wheel of the Parts America car out of Western Auto in Haviland. His opponent, the longtime racer out of the state of Minnesota, the Pioneer Electronic Special of Tom Hoover. A family racing team for so many years. Hoover had qualified in the number 12 spot. His dad, in fact, George, nearing the age of 90, still active on the car. Tom beat Jim Wilkerson in the first round. Gary Bolger was the first round victim of Al Hoffman, who ended up qualifying 4th at a 5:03. New camera angle. Our onboard camera looks over the roof on the Pontiac Firebird. That's Tom Anderson, the crew chief, making the final adjustments. Al's wife, Helen, directing him into the spot of the starting line she thinks is going to provide the best traction. Is on a wild ride, oh so close to the center line. I don't think he hit it, but the officials will have to make that judgment call. Hoffman only runs 6:39, but if you thought Dunn and Coletta's top fuel path was a look of the days of old, take a look at this and you're riding on board. The car gets into serious shape. You see it, then he is pedaling the throttle. Look at it swerving back and forth inside the lane, and the word is he did not cross the center line. That win sets up our semifinal pairings. Mark Oswald against Pedregon, the cruiser with the lane choice. Force will pick his lane against Al Hoffman.
I have some very good news for Al Hoffman. I'm sure he's curious. Did he or did he not cross the center line? He did not cross any lines. That is a victory for Al Hoffman. But, man, I thought you were going to tip it over there for a minute.
As long as it was a wind light, I don't care if it's upside down. That's, I don't know what happened there. It's been, I guess the sun got to the track a little bit, but, whew, boy.
Did you know for sure?
I wasn't sure, no, tell you the truth, but I knew I didn't hit the center line. I never seen Hoover, but.
Good job.
Kind of takes your breath away, doesn't it? Al Hoffman's got a challenge in the next round, though. It's John Force. Coming up next, the Factory Hot Rods. The pro stocks of NHRA competition, they're affected more by heat and humidity than are the nitro burners, but it does not lessen the rivalry or the competition. In round number 1, Tom Martino in the far lane and Ricky Smith. The win to Martino, an upset and a whole shot victory, a 7:19 winning time, losing 7:18. $500 from Slick 50 going to Tom Martino. Another great pair, Bob Glidden and Larry Morgan. You are watching round number 1 action from earlier today. The Pontiac of Morgan in the far lane, the Ford of Glidden in the near lane. And $500 goes to Larry Morgan. Steve talked with him.
Mr. Happy, are you happy again?
You know I'm happy, buddy. Anytime you can beat Bob Glidden, and I guarantee that was a good race. at the finish line, I looked over, I thought, man, he's got me, but I looked over, my win line's on, so I love that.
And that win put Larry Morgan into our second round of competition. Our die-hard lineup shows you the pairings on one side of the ladder. And now here is where Mr. Morgan is up against WJ. Earlier, Steve took a look at Pro Stock performance.
So what can you do to a Pro Stock car when you hit a super track like Topeka? Well, on the McDonald's Pontiac, they have flattened out the rear spoiler. Absolutely zero, no attack at all. They've never run it like this, and it works just fine here. Now inside, crew chief Dick Maskin has lowered the gear ratios in the transmission and also the differential. He says something between Seattle and Denver, sea level to a mile high. Remember, the air is fairly thin here this weekend. And finally, and very important, look at all the lead that they put on the nose of this car. And Dick says that's so the machine moves forward and not straight up.
Here it is, round number 2, racing the Jake machine, the family operation of Jake Hoffman out of Columbus, Ohio. Son Troy at the wheel, qualified 13th and beat engine builder Steve Schmidt in the first round. His opponent, Tom Martino, fresh out of the competition eliminator ranks into Pro Stock. This is his first full season. We saw him earlier beat Ricky Smith from his number 5 qualifying spot. His 7:19 earned him lane choice, and he wasted it. A red light start by Tom Martino hands the win to Troy Coughlin. His elapsed time 7:19. Martino is going to be upset. He ran a great 7:15 here in the hottest part of the day. This is the Mark Oswald pit area, and the work is going on, getting the car ready for the burger battle. Welcome back to the Western Auto Nationals at Heartland Park, Topeka. I'm Dave McClelland along with Steve Evans. And this is Pro Stock Eliminator round number 2. It is late afternoon here at Heartland Park, Topeka. We're going to finish this race under the lights. That is Bob Glidden. He is a spectator now, and it is his son Bill driving the wedge-motored Ford Probe, who had qualified 14th and upset Billy Huff in the first round. His opponent here, the Winnebago Oldsmobile Cutlass, Mike Edwards, beat Chuck Harris. Again, a big upset, as Edwards had only qualified in the number 11 spot at a 7:16. Clinton had qualified with a 7:17. They were 100th of a second apart as well in round number 1 times. Edwards the lane choice. Edwards a full car length plus better on this run. 7:15 the winning time at over 192 miles an hour. These normally aspirated gasoline-burning cars paying the price of this high humidity and extremely high temperatures here at Topeka. Down at the far end, here's Steve.
Well, Mikey, 15 right now in this heat is not too bad.
Yeah, Steve, that's the nicest run we've made all weekend right there. The track conditions are getting worse, but I think I'm finally catching up to them.
Mike Edwards is currently 4th in the Winston Chase. Coming into this event, Jim Yates, the points leader. Warren Johnson trying to catch him. Chuck Harris in 3rd. Steve Schmidt, the number 5 position. The McDonald's Firebird of Jim Yates, number 1 qualifier, beat Pete Williams in the first round. His opponent here, Kurt Johnson, son of Warren, qualified 9th with his Delco Freedom Battery Pontiac and beat Mark Osborne in his first round race. 2 Pontiac Firebirds approaching the starting line. They roll forward until they light the little bulb at the top of the tree. That indicates they are pre-staged, or about 8 inches away from the starting line itself. They bring the RPMs up a little bit, hold a line lock on, bump them into the staging beams, which will be the second light. Yates is staged. Now Kurt. A great start. Through the 5-speed transmissions, and Jim Yates pulls it out by the narrowest of margins. The starting line advantage went to Kurt Johnson. He did a tremendous job getting off the mark first. But the Dick Maskin horsepower and those aerodynamic tune-ups that Steve described to you earlier on the McDonald's car came into play at half-track. And Yates, by the time he got it in high gear, had pulled alongside. And then as they approached the finish line, closed this one out with a true margin of victory of 6 thousandths of a second.
Jim Yates stuns the Pro Stock fans here, and yours truly as well. with low elapsed time of the entire event at 7:10.
Yes. I'll tell you what, man, that felt like a heck of a pass out there. I think we needed all of it. It looked like Kurt got out on me just a little bit. You know, I was just driving my butt off out there. You know, Dick and the crew has worked so hard on this thing, and we've been out here #1 qualifier for the first time this year, and I'm really proud of the team.
Here's a guy that wonders, can he match that kind of performance? Warren Johnson at the wheel of the GM Performance Parts Pontiac Firebird. He qualified in the #2 spot right behind Yates, beat Jerry Ekman in the first round. His opponent, Larry Morgan, we saw him earlier, beat Bob Glidden in that first round race. He had qualified 7th at a 7:16, but slowed to a 7:21 in the first round. WJ ran 7:13 in his defeat of Jerry Ekman, so the lane choice, by virtue of the quicker elapsed time, going to Warren Johnson. Morgan got a slight advantage at the start, but it really didn't matter as Warren Johnson gave himself a 53rd birthday present, a 7:12 win at 193 miles an hour. The semifinal pairing, Mike Edwards against Warren Johnson. The other side of the ladder finds Troy Coughlin racing the quick elapsed time holder of this event, Jim Yates. Funny car semis coming up next. Everybody talks about battles in whatever kind of competition there is. There is nothing stronger than a John Force Al Hoffman challenge. And that's what's taking place here in the Final Four of funny car competition at Heartland Park, Topeka. Force is definitely the favorite based on his 4-second elapsed time of the previous round. Remember, Hoffman was all over the lane smoking the tires. While all this performance has been going on, it is not without sadness here at Topeka. Earlier this week, the longtime photo editor for National Dragster and the National Hot Rod Association, Leslie Lovett, died on a fishing trip of a massive heart attack. He will truly be missed by one and all. Force by half a car length. 496 at 294. Hoffman 498 at 304 miles an hour. Al almost caught up to Force. Reaction times nearly identical. A very slight advantage, just a few thousandths of a second went to Force. Hoffman drifted out of the center of his lane as we watch in this replay. Look, he is already out of the groove, if you will, headed out towards the guardrail. That possibly cost him a shot at stopping Force. But there it is, number 7 in a row, 4-second elapsed times for John Force. And here is the burger battle. The McDonald's Pontiac, driven by Cruz Pedregon and Mark Oswald at the wheel of the In-N-Out burger car. The Dodge Avenger in the near lane. Remember, Pedregon, the fastest car ever in funny car competition at over 310 miles an hour. Oh, what a run for Cruz. There it is, 311 miles an hour, the fastest speed ever by a funny car. The elapsed time, 492. That earns him both ends of the national record. Force has yet to back up his 488 within the required 1%. Look at this run by Pedregon. The 510 by Oswald, creditable, but far behind that 311 mile an hour charge. Absolutely astonishing. Believe it or not, that's only 4 miles an hour slower than the top speed ever by a top fuel dragster. Here are the pairings for the finals. Cruz Pedregon and John Force, another titanic battle. Coming up next, Pro Stock semifinal round here at Heartland Park, Topeka. They may not have the blazingly fast speed of the dragsters and funny cars, but our Pro Stockers provide us great side-by-side competition. Restricted to 500 cubic inches, maximum 2 4-barrel carburetors, racing gasoline, and a highly sophisticated chassis underneath the stock bodies. These Pro Stock cars are putting on a show. Warren Johnson in the far lane, Mike Edwards in the near lane, and it is Warren going to the finals. 7:09, a new low elapsed time of the meet at over 194 miles an hour. So Warren Johnson serves notice to Jim Yates and anyone else in the field that he too can master tricky conditions here on a great fighting racetrack. This is the replay showing the advantage gained by Warren Johnson based upon his performance, because Mike Edwards had a slight advantage at the starting line. But by the time they reached the finish line, the Pontiac of Johnson a car length ahead at the stripe. Jim Yates and his McDonald's machine trying to hold on to the Winston points lead that he built up with 3 consecutive wins to start off the season. His opponent, Troy Hoffman. That race as close as you could get. Less than 1,000th of a second separated the two at the finish line. Yates wanted a 7:11 winning time. Troy Coughlin went 7:18. You say, how could it be so close? Well, our replay shows us the advantage that Troy Coughlin got at the start. He was almost, and I use the word almost, able to parlay that into an upset win. But Yates, with the Dick Maskin horsepower, was able to come around in the last few inches, and this truly was a race decided by inches at the finish line. So that sets up the finals in Pro Stock. Warren Johnson and Jim Yates, the battle of the leaders in the Winston points chase. The semifinal round of Top Fuel Eliminator coming up next. The NHRA tech staff has descended on Cruz Pedregon's machine, making sure everything is right on that record-shattering performance just a few moments ago. Here's the semifinals. The Bud King Prolong machine is in the near lane. Kenny Bernstein, his longtime opponent and Top Fuel rival Joe Amato, and the Key Auto Parts Keystone machine in the far lane. Amato had to lift off the throttle momentarily, and that cost him the race. Bernstein, 474 at 285. Amato, 474 at 303. Watch in the far lane. You're beginning to see the header flames as the sun starts to set here at Topeka. Watch. Amato lifts off the throttle at that point. Bernstein was able to keep his foot down, but Amato almost caught him as Bernstein began to have problems as he neared the finish line. Look at that, 6,000ths of a second. Bernstein to the final. Here is Scott Coletta trying to once again use the hot summertime season to his advantage. He has won 2 consecutive Winston championships and has been tough to beat in the middle of the summer. His opponent here, his father, and the bankroll behind that entire 2-car American International Airways team, Connie Coletta. Problems at half track, and Scott running 469 earns himself lane choice, and look at that speed, 314.90 miles an hour. It'll be Scotty picking his lane against Kenny Bernstein in the finals of Top Fuel here at Heartland Park, Topeka. Lots of activity in John Force's camp, where the question is, can he run yet another 4-second elapsed time? Why don't you use this moment to join NHRA, the world's largest motorsports sanctioning body? You'll get 48 issues of National Dragster, a patch, a pin, a decal, and if you make the call right now, you get a free copy of Drag Racing 95. It's only $57. Make that call today. This is one of the largest facilities on the NHRA Winston Championship Drag Racing Trail, Heartland Park, Topeka, and it certainly has the best lighting system, the gigantic Musco light shining down on the quarter-mile racing surface. But it presents a unique challenge to our drivers. We asked them, how do they feel about driving at night?
Somehow it seems a little more visually and sensory exciting, you know, just feels good at night.
What's the most difficult part of driving at night?
Finding the guardrails. They get lost out there.
Lexan windows on these things, especially if they've got any age on them, will have scratches in there, and you got a lot of diffusion of light in there, and you really can't see where you're going in.
You get a lot of reflection off the Lexan windows and a lot of distraction. Sometimes I think I get a little bit distracted.
Well, if the car shakes the tires just a little tiny bit, you become disorientated possibly. And, you know, some tracks you might get a little dark spot somewhere out there, and you get into one of those, a little bit of tire shake, and you got a real problem trying to figure out where the finish line is.
I think a driver drives better at night. I concentrate harder. I keep the car more in the center, and I have better reaction time. You see the yellow a lot better, so night's great for me.
When you're focused on the Christmas tree and that light flashes on, it sort of blinds you temporarily, and it takes you a while for your pupils to readjust and you'll be able to pick up a point on the track and get to the finish line.
Some people say I drive with my eyes closed anyway, so no, it's no big deal. They got enough lighting around. It doesn't bother me at all.
Do you feel like you're going faster?
No, I really don't, because you don't get to see things around you whatsoever at nighttime. In fact, it's much more conducive to going right straight ahead. Daytime, you at least pick up some side vision of things happening.
It's definitely different.
And I just love it. It's exciting. It scares the hell out of me.
They've got their chance. The finals under the lights at Heartland Park, Topeka, this Western Auto Nationals, and the first to come to the line, Pro Stock Eliminator, a pair of Pontiacs again. In the near lane, Jim Yates. He qualified number 1, but Warren Johnson, during eliminations, took away the low elapsed time of the meet. He is the quickest car of the weekend at a 7:09 in his GM Performance Parts Pontiac. Tony Yates, Jim's wife, directing him into the proper spot at the starting line. Yates taking a bit of time, getting into the beams. And it is Warren Johnson by just about a wheel width at a 7:10.194 to a losing 7:11 at 193 miles an hour. Our replay shows us Warren Johnson got the advantage at the starting line. It was a close race all the way down the track. Only 1,320 feet of actual racing surface. And oh, so much can happen between the start and the finish. But here, it is all Warren Johnson.
Happy birthday to you. Come on, everybody. Happy birthday to you. He had a tiny little hole shot. It was the 710 that whipped him.
710. Actually, I have to thank Jim for that, for trying to jack her on the lights, because I'm running his new clutchless transmission. My hand accidentally shifted into second, so I have to put it back into neutral, back into first while he was jacking her on the starting line. But this GM Performance Parts Pontiac came through.
That's all kind of pro stock racing, and it always has been.
Yeah, that's part of the act. I mean, that keeps those fans in the stands, and I guess that's the bottom line, entertainment.
Warren moved just a little bit closer to Jim Yates in the Winston point standing. Mike Edwards is 3rd, Chuck Harris 4th, Steve Schmidt now number 5 after 10 races this season. That is Dave Settles, the crew chief this season on the Pontiac out of the McDonald's team. That's Larry Frazier helping out, and there is Austin Coyle. He's the guy that everybody credits, and Force included, with the performance of this Castrol Pontiac. John Force already the quickest driver in history at a 4:88, but the record, because he backed up his time, goes to Cruz Pedregon, both ET and mile an hour. That's the best side-by-side race ever in funny car competition, and John Force gets his 8th consecutive 4-second elapsed time and backs up his 4:88, so he takes home the record out of Heartland Park, Topeka. 4:93 at 303. The losing effort by Pedregon, 4:94 at 304 miles an hour. Force was quicker at the starting line, quicker in the quarter mile, and that anticipated top end charge by Pedregon did not materialize. Steve?
John Force, a 4:93, fantastic victory. You're going to interview yourself anyway, so here's the mic.
It didn't get the record. Cruz got the record. We got the win here, and I want to say here tonight, the sponsors, you know who we are. Person we miss out there that's not on the guardrail taking pictures. Leslie Lovett. I wanted to give him 8. I ran into fours. I wanted to give him 8 of them in a row, because that guy, he didn't care about interviews that you gave. He didn't care about the people. All Leslie Lovett cared about was an ET slip. He said, that's what Perdome's after. That's what we went after. We got you 8 of them, Lovett. We love you, and we miss you. I'm pretty excited. This is a great race for all my sponsors, Castrol, Pontiac, Mac Tool, and I wanted that 8 deal. I said, Coyle, don't go record and lose it. Where am I going with this interview? I don't even care.
It was a wonderful thought, John, and we all agree and appreciate it.
And John did get the record. He did not get the mile an hour mark. That continues to be held by Cruz Pedregon. Here are the standings. Force with a commanding lead over his teammate Tony. Cruz is in 3rd, Al Hoffman 4th, Mark Oswald is number 5. One pair of cars remain here at the Western Auto Nationals. It is the challenge for the Top Fuel title from this man, Scott Coletta, the reigning Winston champ. There to the right of your screen was Dick LaHaye, the crew chief on that car. The Bud King Prolong machine, Bernstein, with Dale Armstrong directing him into the starting line beams. This is a rematch of the final round here a year ago, where Scott Coletta came out the victor. Kenny Bernstein trying to be the first driver in history to win Winston Championship titles, both in Top Fuel and Funny Car. Up in smoke off the starting line. Another beautiful run for Scott Coletta. Look at that. 466, speed of 314 miles an hour. Bernstein's race was ended in about 3 feet. That's about as far as he got before the rear tires started to spin. The loss of traction put him out of competition, and it would have taken a superlative effort, though, to have stopped Scott Coletta's charge to the final round championship. Here's Steve.
Well, Scott, to say you needed this would be a gross understatement, but how about a 466 at 314? That polished him off.
Awesome. I tell you what, you know, an extra 50 points would have been nice for the record, but I'm not going to get greedy. A race is a race, and my guys did a heck of a job, and I can't say enough about them.
Great job for you and your family and all your crew. 315 miles an hour, the world's fastest drag racer.
And Scott Coletta moves into the second spot in the Winston standings behind Blaine Johnson, Kenny Bernstein third, followed by Larry Dixon and Joe Amato. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Western Auto Nationals has been brought to you by Splitfire. Enter the performance zone with Splitfire Performance V Spark Plug. And by Dynamax, performance exhaust systems engineered by Walker. This will truly be a weekend of performance long remembered in the sport of drag racing. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan. We hope you enjoyed it. The Western Auto Nationals has been a production of Diamond P Sports in association with ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports.